Hello, everybody. Thanks so much, Evan. Can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. Ready, set, library. I have to put this in because it is National Library Week. So happy National Library Week. We all here at the Campaign for Grade Level Reading have just a wonderful place in our heart for libraries. They are our partners throughout our CGLR coalitions and hubs for so much of what we are talking about today. Libraries can be core partners to all of our literacy movements and are sometimes the backbone organizations. And so I would be remiss to not mention Library Week as we go through the conversation today. And libraries, again, are one of the original places where families have access to free resources and materials to support early language development and literacy. Next slide, please. All right, so we'll start today, and to steal a colleague of mine, Siobhan's words, today's topic is about passion with purpose, and you're going to meet three amazing leaders in their communities who are really taking that passion to purpose with another level. We'll hear from these leaders who are addressing the needs of their communities in unique ways, access to materials, books, playful learning environments, and resources to support families as the first teacher for children as a strategy for equitable learning. We know that these efforts are replicable and can happen in communities of any size. And when we get to the large group portion, we would actually love to hear from you in your community about this work. We are very excited to learn from all of them and from you as well. Next slide, please. All right, so to begin the conversation, we're going to just warm up, and I would love to have you respond in the chat to today's first conversation starter. So there'll be two. The first one is think about a time when you have received a resource that you valued. So when you have, just fill in the thought and put your thought here in the chat. When you have received a free resource that you value, how do you feel? We'll just take a moment to let you type in the first thing that comes to your mind when you've received a resource. So I asked this question because if you put yourself in the shoes of the families and the children who receive free book, maybe a free guide around how to help their children, it could be perhaps learning materials, and these are things that you value and you cherish. These are the feelings that they might have as well. So just keep them coming. I'm seeing lots of gratefuls, energized, thankfuls. I will do a couple more as they come in. Yeah, so just put yourself in the shoes of the families that we're all helping here. All right, next slide, please. Okay, and so this one's a little bit more about the work that you do. Again, please respond in the chat. We would love to collect your responses here. And when we get to the larger group conversation, I'll invite you all to come off of mute and share voice behind what you're saying. So if you do provide free resources in your community, what types of resources are they? Are they books? Do you also provide the free books at giveaways? Sometimes during the summer that does happen. Print materials? Do you have story walks? What are the kinds of things that you are sharing in your community for families and children? So Ashley, thank you for that. You have books that you're giving out. What else? Veronica, books, activities. Jerry Hyde, I see you. Hi, Jerry Hyde. Books for children, digital books. All right, just keep them coming. Oh, Rosa gives food. I'm going to go to where Rosa is. Thank you. All right, so just keep them coming. And as I said, we will have time later for us to provide voice behind these things and learn a little bit more about what it is that you share. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our first speaker. Birdie's Bookmobile is a nonprofit organization addressing generational illiteracy patterns and getting books into the hands and homes of children and families in Detroit. Through book distribution and evidence-based literacy programs, they are helping to improve student reading scores and fostering a love of reading. It is my joy and pleasure to introduce founder and executive director of Birdie's Bookmobile, Elise Hartman. Elise, if you could go ahead and come on camera and join us, that would be awesome. And just tell us a little bit about your origin story and where Birdie's Bookmobile was hatched and how this was hatched.
Yes, thank you. Birdie's Bookmobile was actually hatched in June of 2022. but I had a dream 15 years prior about Birdie's Bookmobile. And in 2019, had the opportunity to start planning. And I was really hoping to be on the road in 2020. And of course, we had the pandemic, but we hatched in June of 2022 and are serving our community here in Detroit. So, our mission is to make diverse books more accessible, to increase the number of books that children have access to at home, and to help improve literacy outcomes here in this city. And one thing about books, we always hear, and I'm sure everyone is familiar with the quote that they're mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors. And that holds very true for me because I grew up with a mother who was a kindergarten teacher. And in fact, she was my kindergarten teacher. And reading was something that we did together. And some of my fondest memories come from the fact that we sat together and had shared reading, and that I always had books and I was surrounded by books, and I was an early reader. But I didn't just read the stories came to life through the characters because I would then begin to portray these characters. And that led to children's theater, and it led to creative writing, and something that my grandmother and I enjoyed doing together, writing one another letters and stories. And so I wanted children to be able to experience this. And I think for me, at a certain point in my life, I had a challenge after I went through a divorce and had four children, and my kids did not have access to books in the same way that I did as a child. And I wanted to make sure that children experienced what I did, having access to books, having access to books that could come to life, being creative and using their curiosity and their creativity, as they say, to experience story. And that's one thing that we're doing here in the city is we're taking these stories. We like to say where stories come to you. We're taking these stories to children here in the city, and diverse books, making sure that our kids have access to books with BIPOC characters, with diverse cultures and traditions, with neurodivergent characters and disabled characters. We want to make sure that these characters are also portrayed in the stories that we're providing to the children. So we purchase about 70% of our books, and the other 30% we get through book drives and book donations and things along those lines. So those typically are not always diverse, but we are adamant about making sure that we buy brand new diverse books for our children here in the city.
I
But
love
one
that.
thing that I often think about is that when I was a child and when I was growing up, I read great stories. I had Pippi Longstocking and, all of the Laura Ingalls Wilder books, and
Mm.
books that didn't necessarily reflect me and how I looked. And I adamantly remember when Roots came out. I was so young, and my parents were reading the book written by Alex Haley, and here I am reading Roots, and I was so connected to that because finally I felt like, oh, there's story where there is representation of someone that looks like me throughout this story. And I want to again make sure that kids experience that. So we're not only purchasing books with diverse characters, but we have books in Spanish, in Arabic, bilingual books, and I also have a collection of books that come from other countries. So if I travel or if I have friends that are traveling or family members, I always make sure that they get books and they bring them back, and so children can see books in other languages. And these are popular children's books. So these are some of the things that we're doing intentionally as we're building our inventory and making sure that we have the books that we want to get into the hands of the students. But one way that we're doing it is, and there's Birdie, there's the bookmobile, and that was
Where did the
truly
name come from? I have
a
to
labor
interrupt,
of
and
love.
I just have to ask where the name came from.
Yes. So I actually have written a couple of stories that I had one book that was with a publisher and decided that I wanted to self-publish. And I started a publishing company called Nesting Birds Publishing that I thought I was going to lead with. And instead of leading with the publishing company, I decided I wanted to get the bookmobile on the road first. And so I just kind of thought, what is a tie-in? How can I connect the two? And Nesting Birds Publishing, Birdie's Bookmobile, I thought that that would be a great tie-in, and kind of bring them together. But sadly, our beloved bookmobile caught on fire in May of 2023. And we no longer have that bookmobile, but shortly thereafter, last year, we were able to get a new bookmobile that we were working on, and getting ready to get that out on the street this summer. And I found out 2 weeks ago that the bookmobile has been stolen. So at this point,
Oh,
I'm like, you know what? Forget the bookmobile right now.
oh my
So
gosh.
we will not have a bookmobile on the street this summer, but I'm not giving up. I will purchase another one, and we'll just keep the ball rolling.
Oh my gosh. Leah, go ahead. You got your hand raised. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry about that, Elise.
You
No,
know,
yeah, and I just wanted to share, that was a call I was never prepared to have. I got a call from Elise that her book had caught on fire, and I don't know what I was expecting, but pulled up outside of a school or community center, and this like charred, smoking bus. It was the most sad, tragic thing.
Oh,
Um, but I'm so glad that, yeah, I mean, Birdie's always keeps coming back in one form or another, but it was crazy to get a call from a colleague saying, my book bus caught on fire.
oh my gosh.
can you come pick me up? I think that's what it was. And you know what's interesting though is that I'd removed all of the books from the bookmobile to do some inventory, to stage and do some different things. And had a visit at a school that morning, and I literally just put in enough books for the younger grades. So I really didn't lose that many. But as I was leaving the school, I noticed a gentleman walking down the street with 3 kids. And I'm like, you know what? Let me make sure I get some books into their hands. So I was beginning to pull over to the curb, and I kind of shouted, like, excuse me, would you like some books? And as I said that, the bus turned off. And I said, did my bus just die? And then the next thing I know, the front just kind of went up in flames. They said it
Oh
was
my
electrical,
gosh.
but I had books in the back of the bus, and I'm like, save the books, right? So I run to the back, and I'm like tossing books. Here's some books. Take them for your kids. So we did
Wow.
not lose a lot of inventory that day, and no one got hurt. And he went home with some great books for his children. So
That's great. Can you share just a little bit more about how the books are distributed other than throwing them from the back
other
of
than
your
throwing them from
burning
the bus.
bus? What are some other
Exactly.
ways that you get books into the hands of families?
Yeah. So we have over 40 partners, and the partners are their nonprofit organizations, their schools, their after school programs, and they are also police precincts. So, in addition to providing police officers with books that they can give to children if they're in a situation where maybe it might be a great opportunity to provide a book with a child to calm them, we also have books in the police precinct, and in one precinct, we have them where in the juvenile area, so that there would be access to books when the kids are in holding, so to speak. But we also have partners that just call periodically and say, hey, we've got an event coming up. Would you like to come? Or, hey, we need books for this particular event. But we have 23 partners who we see monthly or bi-monthly. And these are typically schools and after-school organizations. So we go and we have what we call grade bandit book fairs, K through 2, 3 through 5, 6 through 8, and then 9 through 12. So depending on the size of the school and how they would like to proceed every month, we might just do K through 2, or we might do K through 5 that month. But we have it set up so that we are engaging with the students, which is important to us. We aren't just going in, dropping off boxes of books. We see the same children every time we go in. We've built relationships with them, and we know what kind of books they are interested in, or they might ask, hey, do you have this particular book? So the next time we're there, we're making sure that we have them. So we also have, and there we are at, on the left, we're at a school, on the right, we're at a partner organization. So we also have 16 little free libraries that we've installed at schools and nonprofit organizations and throughout the community in Detroit. So we keep those filled with books as well. So right now we're going in previously taking, the bookmobile, we would set up very much like you're seeing it like this, but we would set up around the bookmobile. But now without that, we're just going in and doing these grade bandit book fairs.
This is amazing. I know you do a little bit of literacy programming as well that goes alongside the books that you're distributing. Can you just talk a little bit about what that looks like?
Sure. These are parents at a Brilliant Detroit Hub. So we are participating in hosting alongside them literacy nights. So we are actually talking about the importance of diverse books. We're talking about books being mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors, and instructing them as to how best to integrate books into their home, reading with their children, things along those lines. So we have someone that's actually working with the adults, and then I go in and I'm working with the kids, and we're doing some similar things that are kind of geared towards their learning experience. And in addition to that, we also go into schools. I am a certified STEM teacher, and so I teach at an elementary middle school here in the city, but we also offer to other schools at no cost to the children, the school, the organization, the families, two types of programming. So we have storybook STEM, and then we do readers theater, which is a lot of fun. So we do that in 4 to 6 week intervals, and the kids really enjoy it, and the teachers enjoy it as well. So we have those
Awesome.
types of programs that we offer in addition to the book distribution.
Great. Thank you. Leah, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in. Like, I think at least like one thing that's really powerful about your model is when you're going in, like you said, you're not just dropping off books. Look, sometimes just dropping off books is important, right? But because you have that knowledge, you connect with little humans one-on-one, and the grade levels, you are an educator, you're really able to do this beautiful work of matching little humans with books. Like, I've seen this every time you're with little humans and books. But also it's the free book fair component. Like my son's school has a book fair every year. They do use it as a fundraiser. It's the typical company that folks often use. But for many of our schools in Detroit that are very near or at 100% free and reduced lunch, having a book fair, it's just not very accessible to families to purchase those from a book fair. So to have a free one is such an important thing around book access equity. And I just want to like lift up and say how grateful I am that you're doing this work. Because there's something really powerful about that. And I remember growing up, we didn't have books in the home, and I still remember the first hardcover book that was given to me by someone. It was a hardcover copy of Hop on Pop, but
Yes.
I owned it. It was my book, and like the power of that is phenomenal.
And when we go in, we aren't making it's not like this big production, right? Because we're there every month, or we're there every other month. And so you can see here, this took place 2 days after the bus caught on fire. So this is a shot from last year. And one thing though that I want to mention about the bus is that, and this is interesting because when you face challenges, sometimes they can be incredibly discouraging, but sometimes they can also be these things that open doors that you didn't realize were going to be opened. So the fire took place happened in May. By June, we had doubled the number of books that we had given away since June of 2022.
Wow.
So in 30 days, we doubled the number of books.
Oh my gosh.
And right now, this is something that this is not a full-time endeavor for me yet. This is something that I do on a very part-time basis with 23 schools and nonprofits that we visit. But we've been able to give away over 16,000 books to children and families here in Detroit. And the kids are, like Leah was saying, like it was her book, right? Hop on Pop. She owned this book. It belonged to her. And that's one thing that the kids, you can almost see it in their eyes sometimes. And I've had directors send me emails saying this child said they had this book at their school and they've always wanted it, and now they've got it and can take it home. But it's not just the new books that they're drawn to. I'm always like, look at this bright, shiny book. Oh, I think you'd enjoy it. And they're sometimes looking at, oh, look at this one that's been gently loved, that's been donated from a child and who's sharing it now with another child. And they're drawn to that book. So we don't know what is going to be attractive to them, but we know that once they find that book that they really like, they're going to sit down and read it. And that's where things begin to click. And that's where change begins to happen. And that's where we see this generational change taking place, getting books into the homes, getting parents reading with their kids, getting these shared reading experiences, getting the kids where, they're sitting down and reading on their own. And then maybe later they'll want to share those books with someone else, and they'll be the ones that are donating books for other students to
That's
enjoy.
so awesome. I saw Dia had a question too. I want to bring Dia right into the conversation. Thank you, Elise. You actually gave me goosebumps because I just think about the cycle that you're continuing with books that are gently loved, and another child picking that up, and then perhaps another child would be picking that same book up. That's really amazing story. Dia, did you have a comment or question?
I did have a question, and Elise, you answered it at the very end, because once families start collecting books, we know how that goes. At some point, we want to do something with the books after we've read them enough times or we've collected so many. So I was wondering if there was a way for the children to turn around and then give back the books to someone else and kind of have that reciprocity. So you kind of touched on that. So I love that part about it as well.
Absolutely. And one thing that when it comes to the book drives, so in case anyone did not know this, I do want you to know that April 14th is National Donate a Book Day. So you can donate books to organizations in your community, and we will actually be at Eastern Market on Saturday and at Meyer on Sunday, where people can come and donate books. But in addition to public places like that, we often work with corporations that will do book donations or book drives for us, but we work with schools. And so that's where a lot of times children have the opportunity to recognize that, oh, we are donating and sharing books that we enjoy with another child. So elementary, middle, high schools will do book drives. And I think that's really powerful.
That's so cool. We're about the end of our segment to learn about Birdie's Bookmobile, but I do know that you've got some key takeaways to share with people. I would love for you to go through those, and then we'll chat with Leah.
Yeah. If this is something that you want to start doing in your community, it doesn't have to start and where it's like this big thing with all of these partners. I started with 6 partners. And, right now my goal is to grow and increase by 20% next year, not to continue to take on a lot of partners at one time. And so start small, start with people in your community, and don't forget about the local booksellers and the local businesses, because we work very closely even with local booksellers. They'll do roundup for reading for us. So people come in to purchase books. Hey, do you want to round up? And then every month we go in, we find out how much money we have, we shop in the local bookstore, and we're supporting them as well. So there are these opportunities to get your community involved, which I think is extremely important, that you're serving your community, you have the community involved. And 80% of our leadership team actually lives in the communities that we serve. So that's also very important to us. So this is something that our partners are they're the backbone of what we do. We are getting books into the hands of children and families in Detroit through their organizations. So through the children and the families that they serve. This isn't something that we're doing without community and without other organizations. So it's partnership, and it is all of us working together to improve some of the outcomes here in our city that we love so very much.
Thank you so much. Very amazing, Elise. Thank you for that. And we'll have time to chat and ask questions of Elise. And if people are having questions right now, you can go ahead and put those in the chat, and I'll be sure to flag them for later. I do want to bring into the conversation Leah Van Bell, who is one of your partners. Evan, if we could bring up the slides for Leah. The vision of 313 Reads is centered on literacy as liberation. All children, families, and adults in Detroit have equitable access to the opportunities, instruction, and resources that they need in order to develop literacy and grade level reading as tools for self-determination, economic stability, whole human health, and engaging fully as agents of change in a democratic society. It's such a mouthful. In order to reach this bold vision, all those who serve children have equitable access to what they need to make this a reality. It is my pleasure to introduce Leah Van Bell, Executive Director of 313 Reads, the Detroit Literacy Coalition. Go ahead, Leah.
Thanks so much. Yeah, grateful to be here. I was excited to see Eliz, or maybe it's Eliz, you shared that you had a new position in larger community-based literacy work. So congratulations on that.
Thank
you. I am in my fourth year with 313 Reads, but I still know that I have so much to learn. I was formerly a classroom teacher and a literacy coach here in Detroit, and then was a university professor and graduate director of literacy programs and clinical practice. I taught all my courses in schools in Detroit because I think that's how you train teachers, by working with teachers in schools. And I really found more and more that that my heart and my professional interests were called to community-based literacy, so that we were really working together across levels of the ecosystem to support literacy. It can't all be about schools and teachers. I have so much love and respect for teachers, but really wanted to go bigger. And what I want to name is that being part of the campaign for grade level reading, being in the Crucibles of Practice, and being in the communities of practice conversations, like that's been incredibly helpful. And many of you on this call I've reached out to for thought partnering. I'm grateful for that. I'm taking note as folks are dropping things in the chat, like, oh, let me reach out to that person. So I'm just really grateful for this opportunity to come together and learn together. And I'm going to share a little bit about 313 Reads, and I really would love for it to be, informal. And so, very much invite comments and questions and things like that. And for my co-facilitators, to come off and pop in, I'd love that. 313 Reads, we are, can we go back one more slide, pretty please? We're a coalition of more than 90 member organizations. We've grown tremendously over the last 2 years, and our partners are nonprofits, summer and out of school time programs, school districts, particularly public charters here in Detroit. Over half our kids go to public charters. We have regional districts, or intermediate school districts, we call them, state organizations, policy orgs, and funders. So lots of folks and families are in there. But what I want to frame as different is that we are not one initiative, and we're not a nonprofit. We're really grateful that Birdies is part of our coalition and is a really valued partner around book access and other projects. But those 90 plus orgs, folks are leading from lots of different spaces. Next slide, pretty please. And so really wanted to connect with what Elise was sharing, so that what we do as a coalition is we really listen to the coalition members and say, okay, what are the things we want to prioritize or amplify? What are the things we want to dig into? And, we know that we are considered a book desert here in Detroit. If you haven't used the book desert map through Unite for Literacy, I encourage you to do that. And it's really painful when we look at this and we see that upper left map, the darkest areas have the lowest access to books. So you're probably looking at that and thinking about, where your community is. When we go below that, the bottom left shows us Michigan, and we're the mitten, and then the little running rabbit and the up above it to the left there. But we can already see that where we are in Detroit, right down there in the bottom right, that we're very dark. And then in the upper right, if we look, then we can see that we are an area very highly concentrated with lack of access to books. What's really fascinating, though, is that I don't know how well you can see it, but to the far right of that book map, there's a very pale area, and that's Grosse Pointe. So it's really fascinating that we are very adjacent to some incredibly affluent communities, not unlike many of you, and to just literally cross a road and suddenly access to books and other resources changes significantly. But part of this is the book access issue. It's amplified by the fact that many of our public library branches have closed. Some closed during COVID and didn't reopen, and many school libraries have books, but they're closed because they don't have a librarian to staff them. So the doors are shuttered, as it were. And then many of our public charters, which again, about half of our kids go to public charters, they don't have libraries. So there's a lot of reliance on teachers to sort of accumulate books in the classroom as best they can. And this is in addition to about 12% of our third graders are reading at grade level in Detroit, and some zip codes across the city, fewer than 4% of children are reading at grade level, at grade 3. We have the highest chronic absenteeism rate in the nation. It's around 66%. And about 16% of our kids are experiencing homelessness or housing instability. So I throw out those data, and I promise I'm not going to throw out more, just to say there are a lot of intersectional and competing priorities, like food, access to housing, access to healthcare in our community. And access to books is also important. And books are also life-giving, right, in their own way. And so our coalition has named again and again and again that we need to grow book access. And so that's why we're really grateful for the work that Birdies is doing. And as a coalition, we said, okay, we want to do more. Our challenge was books are very expensive. And so, how do we fund that, right? And so can I have the next slide, please? So part of what we've done is that, okay, while we're also seeking on growing access to books through purchasing them, let's also celebrate books together. So one of the things that we started doing, and we just had our second celebration in March, is a celebration of Black Children's Book Week. If you're not familiar with Black Children's Book Week, I hope you will find them. They have a beautiful website. Founded by one individual with a vision, and it's gone national, and it's amazing. We had a kickoff event together as a community, and Elise was part of the work group that mobilized that. She was there with Birdies, but really amplifying books that celebrate our children, celebrate our families. We brought in 4 Detroit authors who shared their children's books and did little mini workshops with kids, lots of resources for families. Detroit Parent Network provided dinner for everyone. But beyond that, it was also lifting up at the systems level, encouraging folks to amplify this as well. So creating some shared tools and resources. We, on our website, this year launched a landing page for it. We were really excited. Branches of the Detroit Public Library were among those who were celebrating. And so for us, as Elise named, so really just echoing what she named, like all children deserve to see themselves celebrated in books. Critically, critically important. And there were more than 20 partner organizations who were part of that planning work group. And for us, these kinds of projects, they arise from the coalition. They're chaired by the coalition. Our Early Family and Community Literacy Action Table chaired this. And so that's an example of one of the sort of boots on the ground things that our partners do to sort of organize together, because any one organization can do its own thing. But as a collective impact coalition, we're always looking for how do we do things together to have a bigger impact. Next slide, please. And then, so, we knew that we were working on amplifying culturally sustaining books. And we were also working on how do we grow book access? How do we seek funding for this? We explored, different options. There are different national programs that have really great price points for books when you buy in bulk for programs or coalitions. But again, it was the funding, and we didn't have unrestricted funding that we could apply to that. So we were really excited to be able to partner with the Molina Foundation. We received $1 million in kind, and that's bringing 60,000 books to Detroit. So, and again, this is something that was owned by the coalition. So our summer and out of school time learning action table, they're championing this. And so it's 60,000 books. They're brand new books that are coming. But what was really exciting about this is that, there'll be more than 50 organizations. Some of those are nonprofits and schools, but it also allowed us to, through this opportunity, to reach out with and engage new partners. So some faith-based organizations who hadn't been a part of our work were eager to be a part of this, and now have asked to join other work that we're building together. Also homeschool networks. We were able to bring some of those in. So it's been a really great way to engage folks. But what's been exciting is it's another example of, as we're getting resources to children, to families, those are ones that have been lifted up by the boots on the ground folks as needed. And they together are co-developing it, they're leading it, like from the application, creating the application and reviewing them. United Way and Rocket Community Fund are going to be leading our volunteer engagement. The host site is Focus Hope. Like all of this is, folks rolling up sleeves together. And this is something that, to bring in that number of books, any organization among the 50 that will be granted, they certainly could apply for it and receive some books, but to do it together, we can do it at such a bigger scale. So we're really excited for this and very grateful. The books are coming in June. And for us, it's a great connection to Juneteenth, because we really do center literacy is liberation. Next slide. So for us, I think these are two really great examples of recentering our why. Malai actually shared our vision on the left, but what I wanted to share with you is really what it boils down to is we shifted our focus of our work from measuring the percentage of annual growth on third grade reading, because we realized that to do that, what we need to be looking at as our metrics of success is what impact are we having in serving the program partners that are serving little humans, right? So we see ourselves as an impact incubator, and we don't provide that direct programming. But how do we make sure, like, okay, we see you're serving with love and serving leadership. You have these great relationships with families. Some of our partners have been serving families for generations, right? We see you. Do you have what you need? How can we help? And how can we do more together? Like that's at the heart of the coalition. And that's actually a really important shift from sort of the framing in the original years. We've also worked really hard to reframe it like this isn't about deficit. It's not about getting our kids to grade level reading. It's about addressing the barriers and really centering equity in that work. So for us, in getting the resources to children and families, it's making sure that the program partners, that they have what they need. Next slide, please. So that really shaped our redesigning our strategic plan. And I just wanted to share this here. It'll be in the deck. I'm not going to go through it in detail, but what was important for us is that, we set the priorities together. It's through shared decision-making and distributed leadership. And but part of this was, as we really sort of transitioned what we were focusing on, we transitioned to a new host in fiduciary. So Detroit Parent Network is now our host org and fiduciary. And that was a really interesting journey. So if other collective impact coalitions are in a space where you're thinking about, what your host organization and fiduciary could look like, or you're thinking about how you might transition, would love to be in conversation with you, because I think those are really big, important conversations that we often don't get support for in collective impact. Next slide, please. And then,
Leah, this is
yeah.
Malai. I've got a question in the QA. I thought I would pop this question in really quick before you go on.
Yeah.
How does your organization seek to support book access for families who speak different languages? And do you have any different approaches for bilingual books or books in their home language?
Yeah, that's a great question. So through the Books in the D, some of the books that will be made that that folks can receive will be in Spanish. Through that program, none were available in Arabic. So for us, we'd primarily be looking at English, Spanish, and Arabic. So as part of the application, we asked folks what percentage of the books that they would like in Spanish. But we know that, again, like there are significant needs in all of those languages in our community. And I will say that this is an area that our partners lift up again and again. but it's the price point, right? And navigating that. So this is something that we've prioritized, that will continue to make sure that we're, exploring how we collectively fund this. And could you go back one more? So one of the things that we've done, I mentioned, like when I started, that it's been really important to be a part of these Campaign for Grade Level Reading, like conversations and learning opportunities. But we also got funding through the Fisher Foundation and Skillman Foundation to bring in consultants from the Collective Impact Forum. And if you are also mobilizing collective impact, I cannot recommend working with Junius Williams and Paul Schmidt enough. They have been amazing consultants for us. They have worked with us for about 2 years now. And we, so 303 Reads and Hope Starts Here, we said, we're going to bring together collective efforts in Detroit, and some of those are there. And so we created a Detroit Collective Impact Collaborative. So really just an ongoing informal community of practice so we can all learn together, and really helped us as we were thinking about like our priorities in transitioning. Next slide, please. And really thinking about that as we were, there we go. As we were launching our new strategic plan, helped us really think about, okay, if our primary goal is centering literacy, access, equity, and justice, literacy is liberation, like what does that look like? It sounds great. It's great on a website, but what does it mean? And so for us, part of really thinking about what are we prioritizing as a coalition was how we engage in policy. And that had been something that I remember initially one of the leaders of the coalition said, like, we don't do policy, 482 Forward does policy in Detroit. We don't do policy. It's like, well, I would argue we all do policy every single day, even without stepping outside of our homes. We're living in policy, right? But the question comes, like, do we become agents of change in that policy? And so as a coalition, we said, yes, we want to do that. So I think a lot of you have been to screenings of the Right to Read, or you may have screened them. But in October, we had a screening, and we were really excited for the panelists. We brought together the president of our state board of education, Dr. Pamela Pugh, and we also had Jamarie Hall, who was the lead student plaintiff in Detroit for our Right to Read lawsuit. That resulted in a $94 million settlement because it was found that Detroit Public Schools Community District had not provided opportunities for children to develop literacy. We also had Regina Weiss, a state legislator, on that appropriation committee. So having that screening, not just as an event, but you can see all the partners that co-convene that with us, but to really then have like tools and resources for family and advocacy. So for us, it was really about growing collective self-empowerment. We also had information sessions around literacy for all legislation. So there was legislation that was happening in Michigan to require some screenings starting in kindergarten to see, is a child struggling with things like phonological awareness so they could get support earlier. We had information sessions on that. We joined coalitions related to that. We had a letter of support. And then also I and another coalition member from Michigan State University, we testified before the Michigan Senate on behalf of that legislation. We were so excited when that passed. We see it as really key for literacy equity. But for us, that was a big shift in saying, okay, we need to be part of this. Next slide, please. Another thing that we said, okay, if we're living this idea of access, equity, justice, liberation, then youth have to be at the center of that. And so we received funding through the Skillman Foundation to begin a Youth Literacy Justice Advisory Council. And that started with youth coming together, working with Candace Hill from Detroit Public Schools Community District as their adult mentor, to do some things like they supported with the Right to Read screening. They like facilitated the question, like that's wonderful. So they started by kind of joining some things we had going. Now they're working with Candace. They have chosen their own topics for professional development that they are creating and they are leading for literacy educators. And super excited about this. The example I have here is Maddox. Maddox is doing one with his dad, Quan, about hip hop and literacy. I love that it's multi-generational and that this is Maddox's passion. He wants to share this. And so excited for that. And they're also, we brought in a fellow from the Michigan Education Policy Fellowship with Teach for America Detroit. The youth worked to build out an interview protocol. And now there are interviews with youth in community literacy programs to understand, how are youth feeling in these programs? Do they feel like they're connecting with their tutors? Do they feel valued and heard, et cetera? And then those findings will be shared with the community partners. So again, it's, those closest to the needs and the barriers need to be part of the solutions. So the youth have to be a part of it. So this is new for us just in this last year, and really excited to see how that keeps growing. Next slide. And this is the last thing that I wanted to share with you about how we're really thinking about together how we name priorities so that the people doing the boots on the ground work have what they need to serve families, to serve children. One of the things for us that's really important is that partners have the tools in their tool belt for effective tutoring. And again, like we have program partners who have served for generations. They are leading with love, doing a lot of amazing work with food, resources, diapers, housing, all kinds of things, and also doing tutoring. And so we want to say, we see you. Do you have what you need? How can we help? And part of this is we center 3 things around high quality literacy programming. And for us, a literacy champion, you may be a tutor, you may be a mentor, you may be a parent, you may be a school-based educator, but if you care about little humans and their literacy, you are a literacy champion. But the 3 things we center are represented here. One is culturally sustaining literacy. That has to be at the heart of it. The second one is evidence-based practices, which, by the way, culturally sustaining practices are evidence-based, but sometimes we forget that in our zeal for science of reading. It's a both and. And then the last one is data-informed practices. So for us, that means, okay, program partners, how can we come together to learn? We often say we're all learners and we're all teachers. So we're working with Detroit Parent Network and the National Parents Union as part of the Zen Education Project's Teaching for Black Lives study group. And the application just opened up again for the 24-25 school year. I encourage you to check it out. You get free copies of the book. You get free subscriptions to Rethinking Schools. What's really interesting about this is that it's very much youth-centered, this deep connection to community. So we are coming together in this monthly community of practice in person over dinner, free activities for little children, and free culturally sustaining books from birdies to say, how can we together think about more youth-centered, justice-centered, and anti-racist teaching across the system. The other thing that we've really dug into is evidence-based practices. So, partners, we did a survey of partner professional development, and many of our program partners, said that they did between 0 and 3 hours of training for tutors. That was, I think, about 70%. And the reality is that a caring, loving adult and a great book and a child is still not enough. If you have a striving reader, really understanding how does literacy develop and understanding how to teach reading, that's really powerful. So we've had a lot of professional learning around things like this one, but we always come back to, yes, science of reading, yes, culturally relevant and sustaining. And so for us, that's, a lot of training and professional development. And then the last is we mobilize a common assessment. And for us, that's Acadience. And Acadience is a valid, reliable assessment of early literacy skills. And, we had a lot of program partners who sort of develop things in-house and trying to get to just a rigor around assessing literacy so that we can really see where are little humans at, what are their needs, is what we're doing helping, and then also using that for program improvement, but always through this lens of assessment and data are tools for equity. They're not just tools to keep measuring and measuring our kids. And so we're really excited that we're moving more now into data coaching. We work with Anna Harani. She's at Wayne State University, and she does a lot of our coaching work. And Dr. Adria Trunkenmiller at Michigan State University, she's been an amazing thought partner around assessment for us. Part of this has also been we created and mobilized and funded a literacy assessment corps. So that is community members who are trained and compensated to do these assessments across our coalition. And Armanak Tobanian, he leads our literacy assessment corps and mobilizes them. So it's really saying to partners, like, we need high quality data to inform what we're doing, but also we recognize, like, you're doing so much, you're at capacity. Again, we see you, how can we help? And this has been an area where we can have some work together. So those are, some of the key ways that we're serving partners. And the last thing I wanted to share is we know we have a lot of growing forward to do. One is collective funding. And our partners have lifted this up again and again. They can apply for lots of things individually, but in some instances, we were competing for funding on things or competing for funding, with key partners. We don't want to do that. We want to collectively fund. So even just this month, we've submitted a couple applications, right? All fingers crossed, but it's as a coalition and based on the needs of the coalition. We also know that we want to grow our family-facing efforts, particularly with Detroit Parent Network. Detroit Parent Network was one of the few organizations in the state to receive funding directly in the governor's budget, and they're expanding across the state. And so it's a great collaboration and a way for us to think about, how we grow more family-facing messaging and resources around literacy, which we haven't done. So different programs will have like their messaging and resources, but in some ways it's like I always say, work smarter, not harder. So if everyone's developing their family toolkit, it eats up a lot of resources. How can we do it together for, a better price point, and just to take advantage of all the amazing expertise and lived experience of the coalition? So that's a growth point. Another one is we know we want to grow our partnership with the city of Detroit. That's been, it hasn't been significant or strong. We are now part of, it's called Get Lit Detroit. It's the Adult Literacy Task Force, because one of the things we prioritized in our plan was, if we care about little human literacy, we have to care about family literacy. We have to care about adult literacy. But we need to keep learning about how to engage and partner with the city, because we didn't originate in the city. How do we work with official organizations in ways that are value add both ways? So I'm really excited to learn from Dia, who's here. And I'll pause there. Thanks for the opportunity to share a little bit.
Yeah, thank you so much, Leah. There's so much robust information there that I want to say that I'm going to create a PDF of all of the things that the attendees here didn't see, because there was a lot of information there as well. Lots of beautiful photos, slides, and things that we weren't able to get that into the deck. And so for everybody, that's going to come in as a PDF booklet that I will share all of this information from Leah. So thank you so much. And this is a brilliant way to transition to Dia, who is with the city of Milwaukee. Leah, you were talking about partnering with the city. Well, we have somebody from the city of Milwaukee, though, not Detroit, who's going to share with us information about Office of Early Childhood Initiatives and all of the amazing work that she is doing. And Dia, you've got a couple of sound bites, so I'm going to mute myself and I'm going to have you go ahead and take the floor for this.
All right. Hi, everyone. And thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here. I was hearing so much good information that if you could see my desk, I've got all these Post-it notes and things that I have to go back and now try to pull together so I can follow up on. And there was so much I wanted to respond to. But we are, we have a limited amount of time, but I would love to invite anyone and, to come off mute if you have questions and whatnot to engage with me. Like Malai said, I'm Dia Wright with the City of Milwaukee, directing the Office of Early Childhood Initiatives. Currently, I am the only staff in my office. This office is about 5.5 years old, and there was not a predecessor. So I've been guiding this office under the direction of a task force that had put together what they felt this office should be working on. And it was so daunting that where we've landed based upon our community and stakeholder feedback is number one on an awareness campaign. And so before I even get into my slides, I'm going to talk with you a little bit more, and then I want you to hear something that I think is very powerful. So through talking to our stakeholders, we determined that in Milwaukee, this office could tackle early childhood initiatives in a
I'm gonna
number
stop
of
you really
ways.
quick. It looks like your camera, like, I don't know if you have a security screen over your camera. There we go.
Hi, everyone.
Continue.
Sorry about that. So in any case, so through gathering lots of information from our stakeholders, we landed on this campaign idea, educational awareness, early brain development, all those things kind of targeting not just parents, but also the public and in general, our business owners and whatnot. So I'd like to share with you a survey that we also did where we asked parents about their literacy habits. How do we support them in being the first teacher? How do we make sure, and by the way, the focus of my office is really children ages 0 to 3. That it's not to say that, you know, we're not supporting pregnant moms, because we certainly do that. It's not to say that we don't go up to age 8, which spans early childhood development, but we really try to focus on those first 3 years because it's preventative work. And I prefer to be in preventative space. It feels better for me to be in that type of space. So I'm going to share my screen, and what you're about to hear are recordings of people that have children between the ages of 0 and 3 that are talking to us through audio about why reading is important, or what is their barrier to reading, or what the city of Milwaukee can do. And some of it, you know, it's not all pretty, and I'm not gonna, you know, I'll just give you a little sound bite. You can always go to our website, NKE4kids4.com, to hear more. But it's just very, someone earlier mentioned, you know, that they didn't know they were going to get teary-eyed. And that's how it was for me when I first heard some of these recordings. So bear with me as I'm the technology person on this piece. So give me 1 second here. And please let me know you can see my screen. It should say table of contents. Just give me a thumbs up.
It's there.
You will.
It's there, Dia.
Great. All right. So we, like I said, invited families that have children ages 0 to 3 to give us some feedback to help us understand how often they're reading to their child, as it says here, identify what impacts parent engagement with their child, and determine what parents need most to support their literacy. So when you navigate this, I'm going to go to the question that says barriers to consistently reading at home. And I'm going to share my audio and just let you listen in for a sec.
Well, I guess I will start by saying, I guess, knowing exactly what their interests are, because, you know, they're young kids, they're constantly developing, constantly changing. And, you know, like one day they could be interested in internet things and phones and electronics, and the next day they want to read a book. So I guess that would be one of them. I guess another one of them would be trying to work and find the time, sit down and read to them.
I would either rather be running late, coming in from work, or I will forget, or I'll be doing something and it gets too late, and then the kids will go to sleep by the time that I remember to do it.
I don't read to my kids every day because, like, my life is kind of chaotic, and, like, I be working every day, so it's like we be gone all day. The kids go to school from 7 o'clock. We all don't get home till like after 11 p.m. because I work second shift. So on the weekends, I'll probably read to them, or like I make them read to each other and stuff like that, like make my big kids read to the little kids. So
Working.
So these sound bites go on, and there's a series of questions that we're asking parents. What we were able to pull out from those that took the survey, and we had over maybe 130 or something folks that attempted to do the survey. And then after we kind of synthesized through all the data and figured out what was actually data we could use, there's about 75, give or take, responses that we were able to collect to these questions. And when it comes to barriers to reading, you could hear some of that, right? Time constraints, busy schedules, work-related duties, even just forgetting to read. And so I would encourage you, or just invite you, to go on that website and hear what people say. We asked people what the city of Milwaukee could do to help them. And one of the things that I learned is, number one, there's a perception issue. Perhaps they think the city of Milwaukee should be making sure their children get the early intervention services. And so I have to look at, how do we better route families and make families aware of what is available out there, because that's not something that would really come out of this office. So, but that's helpful information to understand how people are thinking or feeling. But it's hard also to hear people say, I feel the city of Milwaukee has, failed my child because they didn't get into quality childcare or something like that. So there's a range of things. So now I would ask that we just go to the PowerPoint. And so we started off, we launched a campaign, and I don't like to use the word campaign. I like to use the word movement, because this won't have a sunset. And really, it's a campaign that I'd like to see happen across the country. We call it Mighty Small Moments, because Mighty Small Moments essentially means helping parents prepare their little ones for school from birth, by making sure they have opportunities to engage in experiences that are going to promote talking and reading and just learning together. We just heard a parent say they don't have time sometimes to do that when they get home. They're focused on maybe dinner or getting to bed or work or homework or whatever it is. So part of Mighty Small Moments is even asking businesses, hey, what can you do in your space? And this is why I love the connection to the Campaign for Grade Level Reading, the connection to National Laundry Cares, the connection to Barbershop Books, because we're all kind of in that space of what I call creating these mighty small moments. And I'm sure, all of you that are on the call today are in some way also creating mighty small moments. And so my hope is that, we began to talk about these opportunities in that way, because number one, it helps parents to understand, well, this is my hope, that when they see that type of terminology, it triggers them, oh, this is something that's going to be for very little children. Oftentimes things are for preschoolers or kindergartners, but what about those children that are ages, 1, 2, and 3, and our toddlers? So we want to make sure our Mighty Small Moments are including that age group. We want to make sure that the Mighty Small Moment has something that's free or low cost, so that it's accessible for many families as possible. And we want to make sure that we're giving parents and the caregivers a little bit of the why, right, behind why this is so important. People, know that reading is important, but have an understanding of just how detrimental it can be when it doesn't happen, I think is worth, it needs more attention. So you're looking at a
Yeah, this is Malai. I have a question from Leah about the budget range for the campaign. Can you talk a little bit about that, and then we'll talk about Kids Are Sponges?
Yeah, so let's go back to the Mighty Small Moments again, the slide, if you don't mind. And the only thing on here that we've not done is the bottom your bottom left corner where we have the signage in the shopping carts. We have a couple of grocery stores that have been open to doing that. I just haven't been able to make that happen just yet. But everything else you're looking at in terms of partnering with our Milwaukee County Transit to install these signages at our bus shelters. In fact, when we announced this project, it was the largest in county history of this sort of art education installation, if you will. We've had the billboard signs up. We've also had images of real life Milwaukee families. And so I think that's important to say. And then of course, we're in laundromats and barbershops through our national partnerships. And the budget. So let me just tell you, I started this job at the end of 2018. And through lots of praying and bugging the heck out of people, I worked with a marketing company that provides in kind, and yes, I said in kind, right? This type of advertising. They are the creatives behind this. And so what we do is I work with that marketing company to share with them what this office's goals are, some of the goals, some of what we'd like to see happen. I have a family advisory team that I've assembled. And so through those interviews and conversations and understanding about early child development and really the ask to support parents through literacy and language, this marketing company initially said, sorry, Dia, we don't have time to take on that as a social service campaign. And probably for 6 months, I just was emailing the founder, Gary Miller, about, you've got to take this on. And did you know this? Did you know this fact? And eventually it was like this in December, just before Christmas, he emails me and says, our marketing firm is going to take on this campaign. And of course, that's at no cost. So what my office does have to pay for, though, and I was awarded a grant through our Milwaukee County of $100,000. And so I do have to pay for printing costs and things like that. But in terms of the creatives and packaging it all together and whatnot, that I've not had to pay for that. So Mighty Small Moments, out of Mighty Small Moments, we spent a year just building our residents, our clientele, our families. And we did that by inviting them to different spaces. We invited them to Chuck E. Cheese, for example. We closed down Chuck E. Cheese, had families come, provided them with everything from the salad bar to pizza, all the stuff that you do at Chuck E. Cheese. But what was different is there is always a portion where we have this, I call it a PSA, where we're going to talk about early brain development, what that looks like, what that means, and just give families a little bit of that education, as well as ask them what experiences do they have, right, as parents that can be shared with other families. Because we find that when families start talking amongst each other, there's this feeling of, I'm not alone, or that happens to me, or you tried this and that worked. Okay. So we always have families where they get that education portion. And then we get to put things into action, and we go play and talk with them about talking and reading while they're interacting. We recently had an event at Build-A-Bear, and Build-A-Bear is inside one of our malls, and they had to do a mall scavenger, and we got to go into the mall before the mall opened, and the families were given a scavenger, and they had to walk the mall with their little ones, and we made it fun and easy. The toddlers got to hold magnifying lenses and just look through them and whatnot. And then they ended up at Build-A-Bear, where of course they got to choose a bear and whatnot. And we asked them to make sure they, read every night. So we try to partner this education piece, the fun piece, to make it feel and show that learning is fun. Learning can happen anywhere. So next slide, please. So Mighty Small Moments, we have our social media, we're on Instagram, Facebook. And so by having these events, we were able to get people to subscribe to the website, We got emails because when they came, we gathered their information. We got feedback. And so then we could engage with the families about what it is that we're doing. So the next thing that kind of came out of Mighty Small Moments was this educational awareness around kids are sponges. They absorb everything. And it's so much fun for me to see these billboards and bus wraps across, blanketing our city. When I first saw the iteration of what this looked like, I was kind of taken aback. So I said, oh, babies are so cute and sweet, but I'm not for sure how people are going to feel about, these babies. We tried to make them look like sponges and try to get the message out that, children are going to do what they see, right? And for the most part, the campaign has been very positive. We do have, there has been at least one comment, at least, where someone took the time to, email and say, you've got to stop this because this baby is not cute. And I appreciate the engagement, right? Because for someone to take the time out to do that, I think that's engagement, and that's an opportunity for us to engage, that person in our community. So, but overwhelmingly, it's got pretty positive feedback. And this campaign is still going on, by the way. So next slide, please. And our message to parents, is find those small times when you're not at home to make your learning happen everywhere, right? So right now you're looking at what we call a pop spot. And a pop spot simply is taking a waiting area and kind of transforming it into a learning, I don't want to say a learning classroom, but a learning wait area. We call it a pop spot. You see the mural says, today is a great day to learn something. And one thing about my office, there's not too much my office is going to do without enlisting the help of local partners. So the artists are local. The mural that you see that has a poem on it was written by one of our local laureates for 2022, I believe it was. And so this is a group effort. Our local children's museum gave us feedback on what type of engaging materials we could have that could like take a licking and keep on ticking, if you will, and what they see toddlers and preschoolers are interested in. We have prompts on the wall that kind of reminds the parent, this is what you could talk about. We, of course, talk with the staff in these wait areas because we need them to be, cleaning these wait areas. Tell them how they can get more books if they need more books, and really, and things of that nature. So, and I'll have you hold at this picture for a minute. And by the way, that last picture was our health center. They invested in installing that. And that was roughly around $13,000 to recreate that space. The space you're looking at now is at a local hospital. And the hospital, as you could see, the picture above, the before picture, it had in there, welcome to the children's waiting area. And I remember seeing it, and it went straight to the folks running this floor and basically said, this is your children's waiting area? I'm sure some of you may be thinking what I'm thinking. And they had toys that were in the cabinets and whatnot. And so this is a selling game, right? And so, but it's an easy sell in my opinion. So through sharing pop spots and what it could look like, the hospital invested in their children's wait area and picked up that carpet, checked for asbestos, did what they needed to do, and created this space. And they have their nursing students, which this was already a part of what they were doing. And the nursing students are caring for the children in this space while the parents are actually completing their appointments. And for this hospital, I can't speak on all their data, but I know through creating the initial space before it was fixed up, they saw more families keeping their appointments. And so, which was a positive outcome for the space in general. So now that they have the recreated space at the bottom, I'm sure we'll hear next year, the positive feedback on what has bubbled up, what has been a positive outcome as a result of the space below. So we'll go to the next slide. This here is just another pop spot at one of our women, infant, and children clinics. This one happens to be in an area of Milwaukee where there were predominantly Spanish-speaking families, and so we enlisted artists from the Latino community, and some of the words on the wall are in English and Spanish. Next slide, please.
Dia, it's Malai again. Leah,
Yeah.
Leah Van Bell had her hand up. Go ahead and enter the conversation, Leah.
Yeah, and Dia, I just want to say, like, completely blown away by all this. Like, it's gorgeous, it's amazing, like system-wide, amazing. One of the things I'm wondering about is, I think everyone on this call has felt or feels the pressure from funders to be like, okay, but what's the impact, right? So I'm wondering about what your metrics for success are, or how you're looking at impact as you're thinking about how you share that with stakeholders.
So that's a really good question that sometimes bothers me. And I'll be very frank with you on in two ways. One, when we have the spaces inside the wait areas, we look to the staff that are running those wait areas to tell us what they're seeing. For example, when we put in the replay and learn space, before it was there, staff might have had concerns about children that were with nothing to do and kind of aimlessly wandering around. But now that we have the spaces there, children are more not running around as much as to use staff's language and words. But when it comes to things like the barbershops or the laundry cares, those two, for example, I know they each have done their research in communities to show the impact that creating a space can have. I know there's research that points to the fact that when children have a certain number of books in their home, and by the way, when children are in some of these spaces, they're able to take those books if they want those books. And so we know that there is a correlation to children actually having access to books, especially books that look like them in these spaces, that we know that that's important. When it comes to specifically something like the art installation and having literacy and language rich spaces, for example, at a bus shelter, I rely on information that talks about the aesthetics of what it means to have something beautiful, what it means to have artwork in a space, and what that does to someone's, even their mental health. And I kind of compare this to, or one of the things I say whenever someone asks me a question about that, I typically will say something like, when we put murals up, we know the value of a mural and what that does for families. When we add garbage cans to an area, when something is clean and aesthetically pleasing, so we know what that does for our community. So that's a short answer that I'll give you now, but what I will rely on is listening to the audio and the stakeholders when we initially had over 100 people gather to talk about what we'd like to see in Milwaukee, listening to families on the audio tape talk about what they'd like to see. Part of this is also responding to the community wants, and I think that's as equally important. Currently, Milwaukee County, like I said, has given money. Molina Healthcare has given some funds for a Welcome to Milwaukee project, where we make sure children have books and other things that they need after a parent goes home from delivering their baby at a hospital. Our state of Wisconsin Child Abuse and Prevention Board has also given some funds to make sure for children are able to get these books also for free when we have them in some of the wait areas. So we'll keep going to the next slide. This here, what you're looking at is a story path. The story path is inside of a park, and we installed 2. One was funded by our Milwaukee Public School District, which, you know, is the largest public school district in our state. And the other was funded by the Department of Public Works, City of Milwaukee Department of the Public Works. And what we have in these parks are these story paths that are accessible if a child or someone was to be in a wheelchair. The book that we featured is written by a local NICU nurse at our children's hospital, who was finding that these babies needed to be read to, and she had no way to get books in their hands. And so she created a book. So we're featuring her book called Love Baby in these parks. The other installation of the story path is at a park in a Southside community. And so that park is also in Spanish and English. So that's our story path, pop spots, the laundry cares, read, plan, learn spaces, the barbershop books. Here we are and what I love about this picture is that it doesn't take much. Look at the picture. It's that little bookshelf, you know, there where kids can easily reach it, you know, by the window. We have a couple posters that we had branded a few years back with our friends over at Too Small to Fail. And so, and those posters say, make every moment count, or something like that. The children are at the, you know, wearing either their barbershop books, or in this case, their Mighty Small Moment capes. The barber, of course, you already know about this program, has agreed to talk with children about the books and whatnot. So very happy to have something so simple being in a space to encourage a child to read, rather than, because we know what idle minds, we can finish that that phrase, what idle minds do. So here we are unveiling a space at the at a laundromat. And we also, you know, we partnered, of course, this is Laundry Cares Initiative, to have a free wash day. But here's what I love about this. Partnering with Laundry Cares to have a free wash day is now going to fold into, or parlay into, having a free wash day. We're looking at doing this once a month throughout the summer, and pairing that with a story time by a librarian or someone that can read stories to children. So to me, what's the best part is not the initial opening and having the space, but also making sure we're getting in the space, we're talking to families. There's so many stories I could share about families who get connected because of this space. They develop friendships because of this space. They call the office and get connected to resources they didn't know that were in Milwaukee because of these spaces. So there's a lot of benefit. Next slide, please.
Dia, I want to give
Yes.
a 5-minute warning.
Okay.
So I think that was the last slide that you had. Is that right? The one that you were just talking about, or did you have any other photos that you wanted to share?
So, you know, I want to just leave a couple minutes in case people have questions, because there are so many different, you know, ways that this conversation can spin off, and just to talk about the pros and the cons and the collaborations and the funding. And so maybe we'll have a part 2, but I want to respect the 4 minutes that we have left and just remind people to, you know, I try not to duplicate, I try to replicate. I want to just remind folks to bring on as many partners as you can. My favorite thing to do is to, you know, maybe come up with a way to create a space and then really give it to that organization to be lifted up. So it really becomes, you know, it's their success, it's their win. And so the partners, and I heard that from the other 2 presenters as well. And I would just say to keep listening to our families and our community about what they need and what they want. To date, we've probably, maybe since 2022, have given out a little over maybe about 12,000 books or so. And most of those books are bought from local authors. So almost all of them, actually.
That's incredible, Dia. And I think hopefully everybody can see and feel, when we entered into this conversation, passion with purpose, and we have 3 examples of that with Elise, Leah, and Dia, which rhyme. It gets me messed up sometimes, but we've got 3 different kinds of activities and strategies. We have coalition-based, we have an entrepreneurial in Elise, who is doing this with single capacity, and Dia, who's a part of the city. So I really appreciate the 3 of you sharing out your various strategies, different pieces of scale. I did put into the chat a form. We're really hopeful that people will respond to the form because we want this to be a bridge to connect with the 3 of our speakers here today. And so I will make sure that this Google Link form is also in the follow-up resources so people can feel free to comment about the work that you're doing in these kinds of areas. I do see a part B for sure. This is definitely a conversation that we cannot shrink into 90 minutes. And so I want to appreciate everybody's time today. We have one more slide, which is the lineup of additional GLR Learning Tuesday webinars that are coming up. And in my final moments here, I just want to give a warm thank you to Elise and Leah and Dia for sharing the strategies that you have here with us today about all of the things that you're doing in this space. So thank you so much. We are also, one more thing, we're not going to have a session next month, but we will be back in full force in June. So we hope everybody is able to join us on the second Tuesday of June for that community conversation. So with that, thank you so much. We hope you have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you, Molly.
Bye.